There are places on this planet so strange, so breathtaking, that if someone described them to you, you'd probably shake your head and say, "That can't be real." Mountains that rise like stone castles above the clouds, lakes that glow in shades of pink and turquoise, deserts that look like another world entirely, waterfalls that vanish into endless mist. It sounds like fantasy, like something imagined, but it's not. These places exist, carved by nature, shaped over millions of years, hidden in remote corners of our world. And without photographs, most people would never believe they're real. In this video, we're exploring landscapes so unreal, so visually impossible, that they challenge everything you think you know about Earth. Get ready to travel across continents and discover just how extraordinary our planet truly is, because reality is far more unbelievable than fiction. What if the mountains could float? In southeastern China, in Jiangxi province, Mount Sanqing rises like a forgotten kingdom in the sky. Granite pillars twist and stretch upward, some balancing so delicately they look as if a single gust of wind could tip them over. When the morning mist rolls in, the peaks pierce through a sea of clouds, transforming the entire landscape into something that feels almost mythical. For centuries, this mountain has been sacred in Taoist culture, its name meaning "three pure ones," a reference to the highest Taoist deities. Hidden among the cliffs are ancient temples clinging to the rock, blending perfectly into the dramatic terrain. Clouds swirl endlessly around the towering spires, weaving through the valleys and wrapping the cliffs in shifting veils of white. From these heights, the world below fades into silence. It doesn't feel like you're simply standing on a mountain. It feels like you've stepped into a realm suspended between earth and sky. And just when you think mountains can't get any more surreal, China reveals another masterpiece. In northwestern Hunan province lies Wulingyuan, a landscape that feels almost engineered by imagination. Instead of rolling peaks or jagged ridges, thousands of slender sandstone pillars surge straight up from the forest floor. Some rise more than 200 meters, forming a vast maze of vertical towers shaped by millions of years of erosion. As mist moves through the valley, the bases of the pillars disappear, leaving only their upper halves visible, as if entire mountains are suspended in mid-air. The scale is overwhelming. Everywhere you look, stone columns stretch endlessly into the distance. Walkways wind carefully between these natural giants, offering views that feel dreamlike and impossibly dramatic. Standing among them, it's hard to tell where reality ends and fantasy begins, because this place doesn't just look extraordinary, it feels otherworldly. And if Wulingyuan already feels like another world, its most iconic chapter lies just beyond the next ridge. Welcome to Zhangjiajie National Forest Park, the heart of this surreal stone universe. This is where the pillars grow taller, thinner, and even more dramatic, rising like colossal natural towers above dense forest. One of these formations became so legendary that it was renamed the Avatar Hallelujah Mountain, after inspiring the floating landscapes seen in Avatar. Standing before it, you understand why. The scale feels almost impossible. Reaching these heights is an adventure in itself. Built into the side of a sheer cliff is the Bailong Elevator, the tallest outdoor elevator in the world. Rising an astonishing 326 meters, it lifts visitors straight up the rock face in under 2 minutes. Above the valleys, cable cars drift between peaks, gliding over forests and stone towers wrapped in mist. Here the ascent feels almost vertical, and the view feels almost infinite. And after landscapes of stone towers and floating mountains, we descend into the heart of the Andes, where the color of the water feels almost unreal. High in northern Peru, within Huascarán National Park, Laguna 69 rests at an altitude of about 4,600 meters above sea level. The journey to reach it is not easy. The trail climbs steadily through glacial valleys, past rushing waterfalls and open plains framed by towering peaks. With every step, the air grows thinner and the mountains feel closer. Then suddenly, the landscape opens and the lake appears, a brilliant turquoise mirror surrounded by snow-covered giants. Its color, fed by melting glaciers, is so vivid it hardly seems natural. There are no roads here, no noise, just wind sweeping across the water and the silence of the high Andes. It feels less like arriving at a lake and more like discovering something hidden at the top of the world. And just when the Andes seem defined by glaciers and turquoise lakes, the mountains change again, this time exploding with color. Not far from Cusco, high in the Peruvian Andes, Vinicunca, better known as Rainbow Mountain, rises more than 5,000 meters above sea level. The climb is steep, the air is thin, and the landscape feels raw and untamed, but nothing prepares you for what waits at the top. Layered across the mountain's surface are natural bands of red, gold, green, and deep orange, painted by mineral deposits over millions of years. From a distance, it looks almost brushed by hand, as if nature decided to experiment with color. Wind sweeps across the striped ridges, and the surrounding peaks stretch endlessly into the horizon. Standing here doesn't feel like looking at a mountain. It feels like looking at the Earth's hidden palette, revealed high above the world below. And as the Andes stretch southward, the colors fade into something even more dramatic. Raw stone, wild wind, and untamed Patagonia. In southern Chile, deep in Patagonia, Torres del Paine National Park rises like a fortress at the edge of the world. Its three iconic granite towers, Las Torres, shoot abruptly into the sky, sculpted by ancient glaciers and relentless wind. Nearby, the jagged Cuernos del Paine add even more contrast to the skyline. At the heart of the park lies Lake Pejo, a lake so vividly turquoise it almost glows against the rugged peaks. The color, created by fine glacial sediment, turns the water into a surreal foreground beneath the dark granite spires. Here, the wind moves constantly, clouds shift without warning, and the entire landscape feels alive. Standing on the shores of Lake Pejoe, with the towers rising beyond it, feels less like visiting a national park, and more like witnessing nature at its most powerful and cinematic. And as we leave the wild granite towers of Torres del Paine behind, Patagonia reveals yet another masterpiece, sharper, steeper, and even more dramatic. Crossing into Argentina, the skyline suddenly becomes more jagged. Rising above the windswept plains near the town of El Chalten, the Fitz Roy Mountains pierce the sky with razor-like precision. The tallest peak, Mount Fitz Roy, towers approximately 3,405 meters above sea level. Unlike rounded alpine peaks, these spires shoot almost vertically from the earth, their sheer granite faces challenging even the world's best climbers. Below them, glacial lakes like Laguna de los Tres reflect the sharp silhouette of the mountains, creating a scene that feels perfectly composed. Clouds move quickly here, wrapping and unwrapping the peaks in shifting veils. Standing before Fitz Roy doesn't just feel dramatic, it feels intense, raw, and unmistakably Patagonian. What if a waterfall didn't simply cascade down a cliff, but fell from the clouds themselves? Leaving behind Patagonia's jagged peaks, we journey deep into the Venezuelan jungle, where the landscape transforms into something ancient and primeval. Rising above the rainforest is Ollantaytambo, a massive tabletop mountain. And from its summit plunges Angel Falls, the tallest waterfall on Earth. Dropping an astonishing 979 meters, the water falls so far that it dissolves into mist before reaching the ground. From a distance, it appears like a thin white ribbon, suspended against an immense wall of stone. Surrounded by dense rainforest and towering tepui cliffs, the scale feels almost impossible to comprehend. The roar echoes through the valley, yet the waterfall itself looks delicate against the vast rock face. And from the thunder of Angel Falls, we rise to the silent vastness of Bolivia's high plateau, where the ground itself becomes the sky. At more than 3,600 meters above sea level, Salar de Uyuni stretches across over 10,000 square kilometers, making it the largest salt flat on Earth. In the dry season, it appears as an endless white desert. But after rainfall, a thin layer of water transforms it into a flawless mirror, reflecting the clouds so perfectly that the horizon vanishes. In the middle of this surreal expanse stands the iconic Dakar Monument, a reminder of the legendary rally that once crossed these flats. And rising unexpectedly from the Sea of Salt is Incahuasi Island, a rocky island covered in towering cacti, some over 1,000 years old. Here, isolation feels absolute, the silence is immense, and the world seems beautifully turned upside down. And from the blinding white mirror of Salar de Uyuni, we trade endless horizon for something vertical, wild, and alive. In the heart of the Pacific Ocean, on the island of Kauai, the Pali Coast rises like a wall of emerald from the sea. Towering cliffs, some reaching over 1,200 meters, surge straight up from the ocean, carved over millions of years by wind, rain, and crashing waves. Sharp ridgelines ripple across the landscape like the spine of a sleeping giant. Deep hidden valleys cut between the cliffs, unreachable except by boat, helicopter, or grueling hike. Waterfalls spill down the rock faces after heavy rains, vanishing into the jungle below. From above, the coastline looks almost prehistoric, untouched, dramatic, and impossibly green. Standing here, with the Pacific stretching endlessly beside you, it feels less like a beach destination and more like stepping into a lost world at the edge of the earth. And from the lush cliffs of Hawaii, we travel to a land shaped by fire and ice, where the landscape feels quieter, colder, and almost perfectly sculpted. On Iceland's Snæfellsnes Peninsula, near the small town of Grundarfjörður, rises Kirkjufell, one of the most photographed mountains in the world. Standing at about 463 meters, it's not the tallest peak in Iceland, but its near-perfect cone shape makes it unforgettable. Unlike jagged mountain ranges, Kirkjufell rises alone, symmetrical and sharp against the sky. In front of it, the small waterfall Kirkjufellsfoss adds movement to the scene, creating one of the most iconic compositions in nature photography. In winter, snow outlines its ridges. In autumn, northern lights dance above it. Kirkjufell doesn't overwhelm with size, it captivates with form. A mountain so perfectly shaped, it almost feels designed rather than formed. What if a temple wasn't built on a mountain, but balanced between two worlds? In China's Guizhou province, Fanjing Mountain rises abruptly from the landscape, crowned by a narrow split peak known as the Red Cloud's Golden Summit. Perched on top are two small temples, separated by a deep crack in the rock and connected by a fragile-looking stone bridge. The climb to reach them is long and steep, with thousands of steps carved into the mountainside. But as you ascend, the forest gives way to something almost surreal. The peak looks less like part of Earth and more like a pillar lifted into the sky. Clouds often wrap around the summit, hiding and revealing the temples in shifting waves of mist. From below, they appear suspended above the world. Fanjing Mountain doesn't just rise, it feels elevated, sacred, and impossibly placed between heaven and earth. And from temples balanced on mountain peaks in China, we travel west to a place where entire monasteries seem to float above the earth. In central Greece, in the region of Thessaly, Meteora rises like a forest of stone pillars carved by time. In central Greece, in the region of Thessaly, Meteora rises like a forest of stone pillars carved by time. Massive rock columns surge straight up from the valley floor, their tops flattened as if prepared for something extraordinary. And centuries ago, that's exactly what happened. Perched high above the ground, Orthodox monasteries were built on these towering formations, places of isolation, silence, and devotion. Reaching them once required ropes, ladders, and sheer determination. Today, the structures still stand defiantly atop the cliffs, blending stone walls with stone pillars. When mist drifts through the valley, the monasteries appear suspended between sky and earth. Meteora doesn't just look dramatic, it feels spiritual, as if the landscape itself was designed to lift humanity closer to the heavens. And from the sky-high monasteries of Meteora, we journey to another rock rising abruptly from the earth, but this time in the heart of Sri Lanka's jungle. In the central plains of Sri Lanka stands Sigiriya, also known as Lion Rock, a massive column of stone soaring nearly 200 meters above the surrounding forest. Unlike natural peaks, this one carries the remnants of an ancient kingdom. In the 5th century, King Kashyapa built his palace on the summit, transforming the rock into a fortress in the sky. Halfway up, giant stone lion paws guard the staircase that leads to the top, the only remains of a colossal lion-shaped entrance that once stood there. As you climb higher, the jungle stretches endlessly below. Sigiriya isn't just a rock, it's a throne carved into stone, rising alone, bold, and impossible to ignore. And from Sri Lanka's ancient rock fortress, we cross the globe to South America, where another giant monolith rises. Not from jungle plains, but from a landscape of water and islands. In Colombia's Antioquia region, near the colorful town of Guatapé, El Peñón de Guatapé shoots nearly 200 meters, straight into the sky. Unlike surrounding hills, this enormous granite rock stands completely alone, smooth and vertical, as if placed there deliberately. Carved into a natural crack along its side is a dramatic staircase of more than 700 steps, zigzagging all the way to the summit. The climb is steep, but with every step, the view expands. At the top, the reward is breathtaking, a vast network of bright blue lakes and green islands stretching in every direction. El Peñón doesn't just rise above the land. It rises above a maze of water, making it feel both powerful and perfectly placed in the heart of Colombia. What if, in the middle of a desert, you suddenly found water? Surrounded by some of the tallest sand dunes in South America, Huacachina feels like a mirage that somehow became permanent. Located near the city of Ica in southern Peru, this tiny oasis is built around a natural lagoon ringed by palm trees and golden sand that rises in massive waves on every side. The dunes tower dramatically above the village, some reaching hundreds of meters high. From their peaks, the oasis below looks impossibly small, a splash of green and blue in an endless sea of gold. By day, the desert feels vast and silent. By evening, shadows stretch across the sand, reshaping the landscape into soft curves and sharp ridgelines. Huacachina doesn't just look unexpected. It feels like a secret hidden in plain sight, a pocket of life surrounded by pure desert. And from Peru's desert oasis, we travel east to Brazil, where the desert itself transforms into something completely unexpected. At first glance, Lençóis Maranhenses looks like a vast sea of white sand, stretching endlessly beneath the sky. Rolling dunes ripple across the landscape like frozen waves. But this is no ordinary desert. During the rainy season, fresh water collects between the dunes, forming hundreds of crystal-clear lagoons in brilliant shades of blue and green. From above, the contrast is almost surreal. Pure white sand intertwined with shimmering pools, creating patterns that seem carefully designed. Yet everything here is shaped only by wind and rain. There are no palm trees, no rocky mountains, just dunes and water in perfect harmony. Lençóis Maranhenses doesn't follow the rules of what a desert should be. It rewrites them entirely. And from Brazil's blue lagoons, hidden between dunes, we climb back into the high-altitude wilderness of Bolivia, where the water changes color entirely. High on the Altiplano, at nearly 4,300 meters, Laguna Colorada stretches across the stark Andean plateau like a pool of liquid red. Its intense color comes from algae and minerals in the water, creating deep crimson tones that shift with the wind and light. White borax islands dot the surface, while flocks of pink flamingos wade calmly through the shallow lake, their feathers glowing against the red backdrop. Snow-dusted volcanoes rise in the distance, adding even more contrast to the already surreal scene. There are no cities nearby, no forests, just wind, silence, and color unlike anywhere else. Laguna Colorada doesn't just stand out, it feels like a different planet altogether. And from Bolivia's crimson lakes high in the Andes, we descend into Colombia's lush green mountains, where the trees themselves seem to stretch toward the clouds. In the heart of Colombia's coffee region lies Cocora Valley, a landscape unlike any other. Rolling emerald hills are dotted with the country's national tree, the Caroxylon quinduense, better known as the wax palm. These slender giants can grow up to 60 meters, making them the tallest palm trees in the world. Their thin trunks rise impossibly straight from the misty valley floor, topped with small crowns of leaves that seem almost too delicate for their height. When fog drifts between the hills, the palms appear suspended in the clouds. Cocora Valley doesn't feel ordinary. It feels whimsical, almost storybook-like, as if nature decided to stretch its trees just a little closer to the sky. And from Colombia's towering palms, we move north to Scandinavia, where the landscape turns colder, steeper, and far more dramatic. High above Norway's Ringedalsvatnet Lake, Trolltunga, meaning Troll's Tongue, juts horizontally out from a mountain cliff, like a natural diving board in the sky. Suspended about 700 meters above the valley floor, the narrow rock platform appears almost impossibly placed. Reaching it requires a long and demanding hike across rugged terrain, but the final steps are unforgettable. Suddenly, the cliff opens, and there it is, a thin slab of stone, stretching boldly into empty space. Below, deep blue water rests quietly between steep mountains. Above, the vast Norwegian sky feels endless. Standing on Trolltunga isn't just about the view. It's about the feeling of hovering between earth and air, balanced on the edge of something extraordinary. And from the narrow edge of Trolltunga, we continue north, beyond the mainland, to where mountains rise straight out of the sea. Above the Arctic Circle in Norway lies the Lofoten Islands, a chain of jagged peaks scattered across icy blue waters. Unlike traditional mountain ranges, these sharp granite spires erupt directly from the ocean, creating a dramatic contrast between dark rock and bright coastal villages below. Red fishing cabins line the shoreline, dwarfed by towering cliffs behind them. In summer, the midnight sun refuses to set. In winter, the northern lights sweep across the sky, painting the peaks in shifting green ribbons. The air feels crisp, the sea vast, and the scale almost overwhelming. The Lofoten Islands don't feel like a typical coastal destination. They feel raw, cinematic, and almost impossibly beautiful at the edge of the Arctic world. What if a city had nowhere to grow except forward? In China's Yunnan province, Yanjin stretches like a thin ribbon through a steep mountain valley. Squeezed between towering cliffs and the rushing Nanxi River, it is often called the narrowest city in the world. In some sections, the entire city measures only about 30 meters or 98 feet from one side to the other. There's no wide skyline here, no sprawling neighborhoods. Buildings cling tightly to the riverbanks, stacked closely together as the mountains rise sharply on both sides. From above, Yanjin looks almost unreal, a line of structures carefully placed between stone walls. With limited space, the city extends lengthwise along the valley, adapting to the terrain instead of reshaping it. Yanjin doesn't dominate its landscape, it survives within it, proving that even in the tightest spaces, life finds a way to thrive. What if an entire city decided to choose just one color? Tucked into the foothills of Morocco's Rift Mountains, Chefchaouen feels like stepping into a world washed entirely in blue. From narrow alleyways to staircases, doors and walls, nearly every surface is painted in shades, ranging from soft sky blue to deep indigo. Wandering through its winding streets feels almost dreamlike. Light reflects gently off the blue walls, creating a calm, almost surreal atmosphere. The tradition of painting the city blue is said to have spiritual and cultural origins, and over time, it has transformed Chefchaouen into one of the most visually distinctive cities in the world. Above the town, rugged mountain peaks frame the horizon, contrasting beautifully with the cool tones below. Chefchaouen doesn't overwhelm with height or scale. It captivates through color, simplicity, and the quiet magic of a city that feels like it belongs inside a painting. What if you could visit another planet without ever leaving Earth? Far out in the Arabian Sea, off the coast of Yemen, lies Socotra Island, a place so strange it feels almost extraterrestrial. Far out in the Arabian Sea, off the coast of Yemen, lies Socotra Island, a place so strange it feels almost extraterrestrial. Isolated for millions of years, the island evolved in near solitude, creating landscapes found nowhere else on Earth. Most famous are the dragon's blood trees, with umbrella-shaped canopies perched atop thick trunks as if designed by imagination rather than nature. But scattered across the island are also ancient baobab trees, their swollen, bottle-shaped trunks rising dramatically from rocky terrain, as if planted upside down. On the island's western edge lies Détroit Lagoon, a sweeping arc of turquoise water bordered by white sand and towering limestone cliffs. The lagoon's colors shift between deep blue and pale green, contrasting sharply with the rugged mountains behind it. Socotra doesn't just look different. It feels like a world, untouched by time, suspended between ocean, desert, and something almost extraterrestrial. What if sand could glow? In the heart of Australia's Whitsunday Islands, Whitehaven Beach stretches for 7 kilometers along the edge of impossibly clear turquoise water. But what makes this beach extraordinary isn't just its location. It's the sand itself. Composed of nearly pure silica, the sand is brilliantly white and incredibly fine, giving the shoreline a luminous, almost surreal appearance. At the northern end lies Hill Inlet, where shifting tides swirl the white sand and blue water together into hypnotic patterns that change by the hour. From above, it looks like a living painting, curves of white blending seamlessly into shades of aqua and deep blue. There are no high-rise hotels lining the coast, no busy boardwalks, just pristine shoreline framed by tropical hills. Whitehaven Beach doesn't just look beautiful, it looks unreal, like nature refined to absolute perfection. And from the sunlit shores of Australia, we travel to a coastline, shaped not by calm tides, but by centuries of relentless Atlantic waves. On Ireland's west coast, in County Clare, the cliffs of Moher rise dramatically from the ocean, stretching for about 14 kilometers along the edge of the continent. At their highest point, they soar to 215 meters above the crashing sea below. Dark rock faces plunge vertically into the Atlantic, where white waves explode against the base in constant motion. Seabirds circle along the cliffs, carried by powerful ocean winds. There are no barriers between you and the vast Atlantic beyond the edge, just wind and the sound of waves far below. The cliffs of Moher don't whisper their beauty, they declare it, bold, raw, and unmistakably wild. And from Ireland's towering sea cliffs, we venture deeper into the North Atlantic, to a place where the landscape feels even more remote, more windswept, and almost untouched by time. Between Iceland and Norway lie the Faroe Islands, a rugged archipelago of steep green mountains rising sharply from dark, restless seas. Here, cliffs don't just meet the ocean. They plunge straight into it, carved by relentless wind and waves over thousands of years. Waterfalls tumble directly from grassy heights into the Atlantic below, vanishing into mist before they reach the surface. Small villages with turf-roofed houses cling to narrow fjords, dwarfed by the towering peaks around them. Clouds drift low across the hills, constantly reshaping the scenery. One moment, the islands feel clear and open. The next, they disappear into fog. The Faroe Islands don't feel discovered. They feel elemental, like nature stripped to its most dramatic and powerful form. And from the remote North Atlantic, we move to the heart of Europe, where one mountain rises so perfectly shaped, it almost feels symbolic. On the border between Switzerland and Italy, the Matterhorn stands at 4,478 meters, piercing the sky with its unmistakable pyramid silhouette. Unlike sprawling mountain ranges, this peak rises alone, sharply defined on all sides, its ridges meeting in a near-perfect summit. Its steep rock faces and snow-covered ridges have challenged climbers for generations. From the nearby town of Zermatt, the mountain dominates the horizon, reflecting in still alpine lakes like a mirror of stone. Clouds often wrap around its upper ridges, revealing and concealing the summit in shifting layers. The Matterhorn doesn't rely on size alone. It captivates through symmetry, precision, and presence. A mountain so iconic, it feels less like part of a range and more like the embodiment of the Alps themselves. And from the sharp symmetry of the Alps, we travel east, to a mountain range that feels less like geography and more like traditional Chinese art brought to life. In Anhui Province, Mount Huangshan, known as Yellow Mountain, rises in a maze of jagged granite peaks shaped over millions of years. Unlike solid, towering summits, these formations are slender and dramatic, often topped with ancient pine trees that seem to grow directly from the rock itself. One of Huangshan's most famous features is its sea of clouds. When mist fills the valleys below, the peaks appear to float above a white ocean, creating a scene so surreal it inspired centuries of Chinese paintings and poetry. Stone stairways and pathways wind along the cliffs, revealing views that shift with every turn. Mount Huangshan doesn't just look majestic, it feels timeless, as if it has existed quietly between earth and sky for eternity. And that's the incredible truth about our planet. From mountains that pierce through seas of clouds to lakes painted in impossible shades of blue and red. From towering granite spires in Patagonia to emerald cliffs rising from the ocean, Earth refuses to be predictable. These places don't just look unreal, they expand our sense of what's possible. They remind us that nature is more imaginative than anything we could design. No filters, no special effects, just time, pressure, wind, water, and millions of years of creation. The world is wilder, more dramatic, and more breathtaking than we often realize. And no matter how much we explore, there will always be landscapes waiting to surprise us. So, which place amazed you the most? Let me know below. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys across the most extraordinary corners of our planet.